thanks for having me here. I know our position, which is at the end of the day, and it's actually a great position because you've seen a lot of technology, and the way I approach technology is as an operations level. So when I started Intera, I actually am similar to you as an operations leader, is I have two co-founders, and one is a chief, so that's Kate Dargan, and she is big blue arrow, strategic thinker, hand it to someone to get it done. The other co-founder is a GIS analyst and a technician and also expert named Dave Blankenship, who's similar to you having a GIS, who says, I have a great idea, let's go do this. And my job is to sit in the middle and try and get it to work. And so what I want to do is talk a little bit about what that means getting it to work in terms of operations and in terms of technology, because you've seen a lot here today. So this is us, we're Intera, and again, started by about in 2010 is when we started, and this is really the history of Intera, which is trying to transform operations using what's happening. And I always like to start, again, this is sort of the big picture for you, and this is actually what I'll focus on. I actually have two topics. One was to talk a little bit about technology adoption, and because that's where you are today, that's where the fire service is today, and then show some examples. I'm going to use our product, but you could replace our product with many of the products you've seen here today to talk about examples of using products to do something to transform your operations or make you better or safer in your operations. I put this slide up because we had our marketers come up with this slide, and I put this slide up to challenge both industry and you, is to say, you have just completed your first technology deployment in fire. Actually, it's your second. You had CAD and RMS, that was a start, kind of a slow roll, took a lot of time for that to go, and really got to a stage and has sort of coasted in that stage. While that happened, since 2007, the San Diego fires, when I was in Riverside, since then, all these things have happened in fire. This is a small snapshot of all the vendors that do something in public safety. And you can see some common threads. We do incident management. We do inspections. We do analysis and reporting. We have common operational pictures. All of those really came out since 2007. And because of this, I think you can say it's there. Where we are now is in technology adoption. And has anybody seen this chart before? This is the famous Gartner hype cycle. This is published every year for technology. And it shows it's a way of thinking about technology deployments. And technology deployments often follow this exact curve, at least in terms of outside people looking at technology. You go through a period of really high expectations, then you hit the trough of disillusionment, which we can often describe as about 5 years into our CAD system deployments. We then go into enlightenment, and then we actually figure out what to do. Even if we don't like our CAD system, we find out how to do things with our CAD system. So I would say today, this is just Brian, we're about here in terms of general technology adoption in the fire service. And what's interesting about the fire service and public safety is, you may not know this, but public safety is considered the second slowest technology adopter in terms of industries. The slowest technology adopter is construction. And construction is about to pass because they figured out construction is a logistics problem, and all the logistics agencies and vendors and technology are attacking construction today because it's now turning into on-demand logistics. So this is where we are. So what's coming next? And this is why I decided to give you a presentation less about showing our software and more talking about how we use software and technology, is because as long as it took from 2007 to 2018, you're about to be hit by a bigger one. And that bigger one is data analytics. It's the Internet of Things, of course. That's what Jack talked about earlier today. It's FirstNet, and when you see the FirstNet presentation and talk about FirstNet, regardless of whether you use FirstNet, FirstNet will revolutionize the entire communications architecture. So even if you go to another vendor like Sprint or somebody else, you're going to see an explosion of LTE-enabled applications on your phone and a massive increase in bandwidth. And that's happening already today, but you're going to see it in public safety because FirstNet will drive it, because there's an infrastructure to drive it. And the biggest one is a well-informed public, and this is going to happen in your data analytics space. As data is available, you and we are just learning how to do analytics. Our public does this for a living. So there are people in your agencies, and it depends on where you are, that probably are better at business intelligence than anybody on your staff. And they will challenge your decisions using your data. So what does that mean is we've got to figure out how to make technology a part of our team. And we've got to take charge of our data. It's our data. So we should be sharing it across all our systems. We should direct how it's used, and we should never, you should never let a vendor tell you what to do with your data. You should drive that picture. And finally, we need to empower all of us to make decisions. So what does that mean? And I'll jump through because I'd like to do some examples. But what that means is, from an operations perspective, just like I am the operations guy in my company, I have a chief that tells me, Big Blue Arrow, go do great things. I have a GIS and now a chief technical officer who comes up with great ideas. My job is to make it work for us. So technology needs to work for you, and today it's there. Everything you saw today is delivered. There were no big brain ideas. You can walk out and see a demo of every one of those capabilities. So it's not vaporware. You can trust it, but what you need to think about is how you use it. What does it mean to you to do something? So I'm not sure where my time is, but I'll walk through a few of these. So again, this is using our software, but you can use any. So our software, like many you have seen, this is the world of information today. You can link your information by time and place at the time and place you're doing something. This is a simple example of a jurisdiction. So this is Santa Clara. It's actually the whole South Bay. And the concept here is merging both what incidents are happening, i.e. active 911, what my available resources are and where they're committed. I can see that. If I want to, I can automatically turn up my drive times live for any unit driving around in my jurisdiction. So there's move-up charts, and then there's, can you actually get there? Where's the donut hole today? And then while I drive, I can pull up my pre-plan where I go. All electronic, and this data doesn't have to come from the same system. This pre-plan could come from a pre-planned software. Your drive time could come from a different system, and you can actually get your move-up from someplace else. But as you walk forward, that's an expectation. I would say that if you went to the average public and said you couldn't do this, they would kind of look at you a little funny. But we accept a lesser solution. So I bring this up as something that every one of the vendors out here can contribute to this picture. The second thing is integrating operations and pre-planning. This is an example up in Oregon of a wildland fire from yesterday. So this is a wildcat incident. If you're in a wildfire, this is a wildcat incident that's reported in Oregon. We get those across the entire country. This is 15,000 structure assessments that are done in this particular area of Oregon, and we can see them all on a map. That's great. I can also see all my units running around, both wildland fire and metro fire. But the real power is this. If I sit down and I know the wind is moving in this direction, I can circle that group, and I can get a report out of my pre-planning that tells me how many structures are in the way, whether they're high and low risk. I can get an individual assessment of each one of those structures that were collected. And that data, as you learned from the ESRI presentation, that can come from your department, a cooperator, or the public. It's your choice. I'll jump to a couple of quick ones. I have 2 minutes left. Large-scale incident management is kind of something that we come from the wildland fire. We like to see this and merging information. But I'd like to talk real quick about incident management across systems and agencies. This is Colorado. This was earlier this month. When was this? This is the MM-117 fire. I think it was mid last month. So this is the Colorado system. So Colorado has an aircraft that does real-time imagery and mapping on their fires. This is what they see. The system up in the upper right, or this is the video live to anybody on the field, on the fire line or in the state. Up on the upper left is the NIFC view of that same fire. They see the same perimeter, they see the same video, and they're operating in the same environment. But they have different software. They're just sharing data. So think of this in terms of a resource coming in from out of state or out of jurisdiction on a fire. They can almost self-brief as they come to a fire. And then finally, data analytics. I'll wrap on this one. So you can learn from your department how you do. You saw a lot of things on incident management, performance response, turnout, travel time. This is what we do to manage our operations and know how we plan our operations, right? I can see the performance of each one of my stations. I know when incidents happen by time of day. Round 2 is this. This is something that the Western Fire Chiefs is doing called the Fire Data Lab, which takes all of their jurisdiction's data for folks who want to cooperate, puts it in one place, and now you can learn from other departments. So if you have a department, maybe you run 5,000 calls a day. 5,000 calls in eight stations. That's some variety. How would you like to find out how hundreds of thousands of calls compare to yours, and 50, 100, 200, or 300 stations perform based on yours? So you don't need first-hand knowledge. You can go into the database and say, what is my turnout time versus the data? So not NFPA 1710, real world. What is my travel and response time based on my demographic cohort, a department like me? I can look at how I perform across all of those. This is the world today, and there's a lot of vendors who can do this. So my challenge to you is to think about how that fits into your operations to make you do better. Because we can do better, we can be safer, and these are the kind of questions and ways we can employ the software we have today. So there's a lot of different jurisdictions out here. I would talk to the vendors, come take a look at our software and everybody's, but also talk to your peers that use these software and ask them how they use the software to get better. Did it help them do something or did it get in the way? And that's it. Sorry I went a little bit over.